I'm Andrea Decker. Today I'm going to talk to you about what I've learned throughout my Speech 101 course. I am going to first share with you some of the best speaking practices that I've learned throughout this course. I will then move on and share with you how my formal speeches went. I did informational, demonstrative, and persuasive. I'll share with you what went well and what didn't go so well with those speeches. I will then share with you what I believe are some important biblical principles to be used in public speaking and why biblical principles are important for public speaking. Finally, I will share with you what I've learned through this course that will be able to go with me throughout the rest of my personal and professional career. So the first thing I'll share with you is some best speaking practices that I learned throughout this course. And in overview, those include knowing my audience, credible resources and the importance of those, capturing the interest of my audience, and how it is to use a variety of visual aids, as well as practice. The first, knowing my audience. Knowing my audience is important because there's a variety of demographics that will be in my audience. This includes socioeconomic, religious, race, different personal interests, and different political backgrounds, as well as how people are even raised in their environment. Knowing my audience will help me to cater my message to reach as many people as I possibly can that have different interests or different backgrounds. A second best practice is using credible sources for my speaking. This includes evidence and research and may include background on the topic I'm speaking about, statistics, and historical data. This is very important because it speaks to the credibility of being a speaker on that topic, and also it just reinforces that the message you are giving is factual. A third topic is capturing the interest of my audience. And some of the ways that we can do that is through stories and jokes, using a variety of vocal intonation and hand gestures. Personal stories are always good because they're relatable and individuals can hear your story and they'll relate to different pieces of it, which will help them to listen more closely to your message. Fourth is using a variety of visual aids. Visual aids might include a PowerPoint presentation, a live model that you might use, a live animal, or if doing a informational speech or demonstration on how to create something, having that item there for the audience to see. The fifth best practice that we've learned is to practice, practice, practice. And that I found to be most important with all of my speeches because practicing helps us to memorize the key messages of our speech, and it helps us to not need to use our note cards as much, which also then aids in engaging with the audience more personally versus just looking down at our notes so that we can reach them better. These important practices of public speaking also provide confidence to us when we are preparing our speech and giving our speech. I will now share with you how each of my speeches went in regards to preparation and delivery. The first formal speech that I presented was an informational speech. My informational speech was on the Beagle dog breed, and the reason that I chose that topic was because I have a Beagle. And I'm very interested in the breed, and I have a fondness for my own dog. Very much, I love her so much that I wanted to share with others all the information that I could regarding the Beagle breed. What went good? Well, the selection of my topic went very well. The research went very, very well because there's so much information available on the breed and its history. The fact that I was able to use my dog as a visual aid was a wonderful plus to this speech because it helped me to funnel some of my nervous energy towards the times that I would get to use her. What went bad with this speech? Well, what went bad with this speech was that at the point in time that I used her as my visual aid, I had a moment where I literally forgot if I had shared one of the facts that I wanted to share about the characteristics of the Beagle breed. I don't remember clearly, but I believe it had to do with height and weight. I clearly remember saying, if I haven't said this already, and that was because I was concerned that I was repeating myself. So that part did not go so well in that speech, but I wanted to make sure I shared the fact anyways. Once I got through that, I was able to recover and then complete the speech appropriately. The other problem I had in terms of that speech is my issue with either having a stiff body or swaying. I either tend to do one or the other. I either tend to stand very stiff and not engage or sway. My second speech was a demonstration speech, and this speech was the most favorite of all the speeches that I did. And the reason why is because I was able to actually engage in an activity while I gave the speech. The fact that I was able to prepare ingredients, share the steps of producing a product, show each of the ingredients, each of the steps to prepare the cookie, which is what I did, was fun. It was totally a comfortable medium for me. I enjoyed it very much, and I think the audience enjoyed it as well. What went badly was that I was very conflicted. In one of the steps of preparing the cookie, a blender is used to grind up oatmeal. And I was conflicted because I felt like I needed to speak. I was concerned about the noise of the blender, and I tried to speak over the blender. And it didn't feel right. It felt uncomfortable, and it didn't feel appropriate. But I didn't want to remain quiet too long in my speech either, because I wanted to be able to engage the audience in that step. In the future, I would probably have the oatmeal grinded already and set aside, and just point to the blender as being the tool used to prepare the oatmeal. My final speech was the persuasive speech. And of all three of those formal speeches, I would say the persuasive speech was the most difficult, the most challenging, and honestly the most unenjoyable of all three speeches. It was very difficult for me to pick a topic that I felt that I could present my case for and persuade others into. And one of the reasons for that is because my association with the word persuasive tends to be leaning more towards a salesman or trying to sell a point or sell a perspective. And I've always felt personally that I'm not a salesman, so that made it very difficult. The research went okay. I would say that there was a lot of information regarding capital punishment on the internet, although it was challenging to also find supporting information that was not biblically based. That was the key. I found that a lot of my support had to come from the Bible because there are a lot of states that are abolishing capital punishment, so that made it a little bit tough. In terms of what went badly, I would say that what went badly was the fact that I lost my spot in the speech. I got very, very flustered, and I was very upset afterwards because I felt that I left out very key points in my speech that I didn't recover well from, so that was very frustrating. I think also what went badly was in regards to my research, I felt that I had to lean heavily on biblical support because again, the internet research that I performed tend to lean towards abolishing the death penalty. The other thing that went badly, again, was my tendency to sway or to not engage in the audience with hand gestures and vocal intonation, so I need to work on that. So now that I've shared with you what went good and bad with my speeches, I'd like to share a couple of biblical scriptures that I feel communicate principles for public speaking. The first scripture is Proverbs 12:17 and 19, which say, "A truthful witness gives honest testimony, but a false witness tells lies. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." The other passage is Psalm 56:3 and 4. "When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me?" And the reason these verses speak to me is because Proverbs, the passage talks about being honest and not giving false testimony. And I think that speaks to credible resources, credible research. What you're sharing with your audience, you need to be very, very sure and double check that what you're relaying to them is truth, and that you aren't just speaking on opinion or speaking of what your perspective is, but that you've backed it up with evidence. In regards to the Psalm verses, I feel that those just bring us peace, and those remind us that God's in control, that we can get through the speeches when we're nervous, and that we just need to trust in Him for our needs. The reason it's important to consider biblical principles in general when it comes to public speaking is because they will lead to us honoring God with the information we communicate. They'll also ensure that the information we're gathering and presenting it holds integrity and ethical practices in our public speaking. So now that I've shared with you the biblical passages that I felt spoke to public speaking and why they're important, I would like to share with you what I've learned in my personal, that I can take with me in my personal and professional life. From this speech course specifically, I've learned to be more aware of opinions versus facts when speaking to others, whether it's in a large forum or one-on-one. I've also learned to be more sensitive to the variety of people groups that will be in my audience. I don't think that I've really honestly ever considered that before, and I think it's very important because of the diversity of our world. In regards to my workplace, we have multiple ethnic groups and religious backgrounds, and I need to remember that my audience is not going to always be full of Christians or people who are following Christ. And so I have to consider that, as well as socioeconomic backgrounds. So there's different people with different financial situations that I need to consider when presenting information. I also need to remember that most importantly, I will be more objective and sensitive to others. When I go to conferences and seminars and listen to people that are speaking, I need to remember that they've put a lot of effort and energy into their presentations and gathering their data, and they're just as nervous as I've been in giving my speeches, and so I need to give them grace and listen to them and let them recover and give them the credit they're due. I will also work in terms of my future presentation skills. I'm going to work to be more enjoyable by sharing more stories, sharing more jokes, trying to engage in my audience more so that they'll feel comfortable and then I'll feel more comfortable as well. Visual aids also will help in working on my tone and hand gestures. The best practices that I have learned, as well as the experiences that I've had in preparing my formal speeches and the biblical principles that I have researched, will follow me day in and day out throughout my personal and professional career. And I just am very appreciative of what I've learned in this course. Thank you.